This week, Emmet and I resume our discussion of Jack Kirby's 1970s work, and we're up to his 1975 return to Marvel. We'll begin his run on Captain America and the Falcon, issues 193 and 194, as they try to stop the threat of the Madbomb. We hope you'll spread the word about Deconstructing Comics, tell your friends about us, share episodes on social media, and also send us suggestions for topics we could cover. Email us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. This is Tim.
This is Emmet.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo. Emmet is in country Victoria, Australia. Hello.
How are you going, Tim?
Okay. How are you? How is the cat? I saw the cat before we got started here.
The cat was here briefly. And I've let her out of the room because she can be a distraction at the best of times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we've finished, pretty much all of Kirby's early 70s DC work, what's available, a few things that aren't available anymore, but I think we read all of it that's accessible. And now we've gotten to the point where he went back to Marvel, and we're going to try to go through all of his second stint at Marvel. And I wanted to do the books in chronological order, and according to the Kirby chronology on MarvelMasterworks.com, he did some covers when he first got back, various books, but the first series that he worked on, the interiors, was Captain America. Now, in case you've just discovered superhero comics, I'll mention that Jack Kirby was the original Cap artist back in 1940 with Joe Simon writing, back when the publisher was called Timely Comics. And Wikipedia mentions that Simon thought the best superheroes are defined by their relationship with a particular villain, and he decided the villain would be Hitler.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Well, sometimes it kind of works now. They still bring in Nazis now and then.
Well, Nazis are back in a big way. So, totally
yeah, in the real world, yes. So, but Simon had worked with Kirby before, and he wanted him on Captain America. He's quoted as saying, "If Kirby hadn't drawn it, it might not have been much of anything."
Yeah. And you can kind of see it. It is interesting just how such a concept, because they tried the same concept before. They had a version of Captain America before Captain America, this sort of emblematic American hero figure with a shield, if I'm recalling correctly. And yeah, it didn't necessarily hit, but it's just because it just happened to coincide with a lot of the trying to get America more involved with the war effort. You see how Captain America is very useful as a symbol of his time, even though he's a man out of time as we know him. But he works really well as a symbol. And it's interesting how different writers interpret that as a brief. Kirby is one of the ones who definitely sees it as he's an opportunity to hold the country to account. Not everybody is. And not everybody sees it the same way.
So, yeah, and then of course, I think Kirby just kind of did this and that for a while. And of course, he had his big run with Marvel in the 60s. Went to DC for a few years, came back to Marvel in 1975. Now, of course, the Commandy stuff was still coming out. His last Commandy issue, number 40, was dated April of 76. So you look at the Kirby chronology month by month, and there's Marvel stuff, and then you see Commandy in there. Oh, okay. He must have really built up a backlog before he left.
Yeah. You get he was a worker as well. He was putting them out. It just occurred to me, because you brought up Joe Simon, it occurred to me, the anniversary of his death is coming up. And yes, it is. In fact, it's on the 14th of December. And he died in 2011 at the age of 98.
Okay.
So that's 12 years ago. Next month. Wow. Exactly at the date of recording, a month's time. Yeah. But yeah, I remember that. I remember there was a lot of sort of reflections on Joe Simon, and then there was like, oh wow, he's actually, because there was this idea out there that Stan Lee created Captain America, because Stan Lee's name was in all the Marvel
Right.
properties.
I'm sure Stan wouldn't argue with that.
He wouldn't dispute it. And Kirby famously would spend a lot of his later years, in particular, when he was giving interviews, trying to unpack things that he did and then what Stan may have done. But yeah, Stan Lee had sort of, again, taken some ownership of Captain America, I feel. And I find it interesting that Kirby's first book when he comes back to Marvel is Captain America. And there's something like this is mine. I'm going to use this opportunity to say some stuff, you know. But yeah, Joe Simon's death was a sort of, I think, a fan culture moment for certain people. They had this revelation of understanding that, oh, some other guy wrote Captain America originally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and he happens to be coming back just as the bicentennial is coming down the pike.
Oh, yes.
And he takes full advantage of that here. And also, I found that he put out, or he worked on, I guess, I don't know if he wrote and drew the whole thing, in June of 76, this Captain America's Bicentennial Battles book came out, 10 by 13 inches. I guess that would be maybe treasury size, 84 pages. And it's still available. You can get it digitally as well as paper. So maybe we'll get to that later. Now, as he comes back to Captain America with issue 193, dated January 76, but came out October 14th of 75. Now, the masthead, starting with, I looked it up. I was doing some research here. Going back to 134, the masthead said Captain America and the Falcon. So, you know, through the long Steve Englehart run, it had said that. And then there were some issues where there wasn't really a regular writer. It was Marv Wolfman, it was John Warner, it was Tony Isabella. It kind of jumped around before Kirby came on. Now, this first issue, 193, just says Captain America in the masthead. I mean, Falcon is on the cover. We see him there.
And he's an essential part of the plot too.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe they took out Falcon from the masthead just for that one issue, partially because it would have been too crowded, because there are a couple of other text boxes there around the masthead. One says, King Kirby is back and greater than ever.
Yeah.
And the other one says, Madbomb, it can destroy the world.
Can I just say as well, like, Madbomb is such a great name. Such a great name. You know, and like people still refer to the Madbomb era of Captain America as just like, yeah, this was good. This is some good stuff.
So, you know, to have and the Falcon in there too, it would have just been kind of a mess, and there wouldn't have been much room for art. So,
did you notice the signature on the cover art?
No, I didn't.
It's Kirby and Romita.
Oh, yeah.
On the cover, yeah.
J. Kirby and J. Romita. I wonder who did what. Was Romita inking, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. Just helping.
That's certainly a Kirby Cap pose.
Yeah, and the faces, well, the characters in the background, they're very Kirby-esque.
But yeah, I can kind of feel a Romita about it, too. Maybe that's the inking. So, yeah, Cap is definitely front and center on this cover, taking up most of the space. We see Falcon in the background, and then behind him, a rioting mob, which does definitely figure in the story in this issue.
And, you know, we've been reviewing a bunch of Kirby DC titles, as you mentioned before, and, gosh, he does like his mobs. He does like his animalistic mobs. That does keep coming up. So, not surprised to see it here.
Yeah, that's true. Mr. Miracle and so forth.
Mandy and Yeah, and a lot of the sort of apocalypse stuff tends to have like crazed, dehumanized mobs just running amok in the slums of apocalypse. Yeah, it's a thing he's looking to work at, I believe.
He might have seen some actual rioting mobs in Europe in World War II.
Well, there's direct like he directly cites the World War II battlefield here, and he compares the after effects of the Madbomb. We'll get to it, but
yeah.
I do think this is a direct attempt to get some of that stuff, some distinct memories he had. Was he present for the liberation of France? Was he there for that?
Ooh, I'm not sure how, with the dates that he was in Europe, but
because I've seen horrible documented images of particularly women who were targeted as having slept with German officers and were literally tarred and feathered and became the scapegoat for the entire country. And I think that's sort of an example of mob justice that was disproportionate to what was actually happening, and particularly the situation those women found themselves in. So yeah, I can see Kirby probably witnessed some dark stuff if he was around that particular part of the theater of war. We do know he went to concentration camps. We do know he was present for the liberation of some concentration camps. So he already saw some monstrous things. But yeah.
Let's see. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page. He was drafted June 7th, 1943. Arrived on Omaha Beach in Normandy 2.5 months after D-Day. Doesn't say when he got out of the military. But it says 1943 to 45, so maybe he was there until pretty much the end. Don't know. Look someplace else. Anyway, so yeah, let's get into this issue. And yeah, the very first words on the first interior page, the Great American Bicentennial is coming. So
yeah, it's really interesting because, like, one of my points of reference for 70s culture in America is a movie that was made in the 90s called Dazed and Confused by Richard Linklater as the director. And that's set in the run-up to the bicentennial as well. Okay. And it does feel like there are people of a certain age, or people like Kirby, who are actually coming to the end of their middle age at that time, or their prime, if you like. And the bicentennial was this opportunity to look back on America, but also people reckoning with their feelings about that and what that means, and the idea of what they've been raised to believe America is coming up maybe a bit short with their lived experience of what that America is. And that's what I find really impressive about these issues, because characters more or less have that exact conversation. Like, well, how far have we come? Well, not that far. Hey, no, we need to hope for a better tomorrow. No, but seriously.
Yeah, well, there's a little disagreement there between Cap and Falcon.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, I think. Yeah, I was 11 at the bicentennial, so I remember it, but I wasn't exploring any feelings like that. I was just like, wow, It's cool to be alive during the bicentennial. So the title on this page is The Madbomb, Screamer in the Brain. And we see Cap and Falcon in front of a huge mouth that's screaming, and they're both holding their ears. And for some reason, I saw this picture and I thought, Trump. It's a perfect illustration of the Trump years.
Yeah, look, a lot of people, like, we're going to meet somebody in these issues who, let's just say, made me want to scream when I saw him. No, Trump is a character who tends to get evoked a lot in recent years in relation to the Madbomb. I just want to say, for the record, I think that's he is not a singular event, Trump, and Kirby had seen many Trumps.
Yeah.
and it's not like it's a new persona even or a new event in political life. The loudmouth shyster who takes advantage of periods of panic and crisis to advance themselves monetarily, that's certainly not new. And I think it's a bit annoying to me that we sort of load everything on this idea of Trump as the worst possible example of anything. Whereas, it's coming to a point now where I'm beginning to think, well, is it that he's the worst, or is it that he's the one who just says it out loud? Like, is that the problem?
Well, or he's the one who got to be president.
There have been other presidents before him who would, arguably be quite bad, but they weren't vulgar. And I think that's what the issue is.
Yeah.
It's like, well, don't say it.
Yeah, I mean, Nixon kept it under wraps, and Trump just says everything out loud.
Nixon was like wandering in the grounds of the White House, like rambling insane stuff because he was pissed out of his brain, and people just kept it quiet. Reagan's brains were leaking out of his ears. Clinton was a philandering creep. We sort of just like looked the other way with a lot of these people. Trump doesn't afford us to do that because he just commands attention wherever he goes, and he says the most vulgar possible thing in every given moment. But what he actually does doesn't seem that far out of the realm of any other authoritarian leader, and we've got plenty of those. So
yeah.
Okay, so we start out, apparently, I'm not sure whose home they're in. Are they in Falcon's girlfriend's home, Layla?
Perhaps, yeah.
Sorry,
or she might... I haven't read the previous issue, so I don't know if she's family or his partner.
Well, I did a little Googling of her, and yeah, it says she was a longtime love interest of his.
Okay.
Apparently they never got married, but yeah, love interest. So anyway, so Falcon and Cap are arm wrestling at the kitchen table, and she's saying, I don't know how you clowns con me into brewing Java for you, but don't make a habit of it. And so she's bringing them coffee, and then some kind of ray hits Falcon and Cap, and they start like really going at each other for one panel, knocking over the table and chairs. And then they snap out of it. I guess their goodness or whatever,
strength of character,
that helps them kind of realize, what are we doing here? We shouldn't be doing that. Falcon says we're acting like fools. But then the same ray kind of hits Layla, and she picks up a knife and says she has to kill both of them. And Falcon stops her, and then a brick comes crashing through the window, and it turns out that everybody out on the street has also been hit by this. And there's your rioting mob.
That's it. And one person has a gun. And I was thinking, no, there'll be more than one person who has a gun.
Yeah, I mean, this is America, for crying out loud.
Yeah, got lots of guns. I, for work reasons, have to spend time on social media, in particular Twitter, or if you used to call it the other thing. And I'm deeply depressed by some of the things I see on there because there's no filter anymore. It's just like whatever you want. But one thing that people on using Twitter seem to really want me to know, really want me to see, is just how many yahoos out there will just pull a gun and they're shooting. Like, I'm seeing some absolutely horrible things, and there's no monitoring, so it's just all out there. And I feel like Jack Kirby would, if you were to resurrect him today and hand him a smartphone, he'd go, "Oh my goodness! Oh, look at this technology! It's like I predicted this." Yes. And then you tap on the Twitter icon and you open up and you see some people like firing off guns in a fast food restaurant. You go, "Oh no, it's all gone wrong. What have I done?"
There's the rioting mob.
Yes.
He might say, I predicted that too.
I also predicted this, but I thought you were better than this.
Yeah.
I thought it was too obvious. Did you not tell how obvious I was being? Kirby's subtle in comparison to some of the stuff I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I do love the guy at the end grabbing Cap. Gotcha, man. You ain't driving your way out of this. I want that on a t-shirt. I know I say that almost every episode, but I definitely want that on a t-shirt.
So, Cap leaves Falcon to take care of Layla, and he goes out and basically battles the crowd for a couple pages. And now Kirby has told us more than Cap knows, because he's already mentioned, like, on page 1, the title of the story, the Madbomb. So we know that there's going to be a Madbomb coming, and Cap spots it, like, sitting. It's not even really an alley. It's just like this narrow space between buildings. And he doesn't know what it is, but the caption tells us it's the Madbomb.
So I heard a fact recently that I love, that a lot of Hollywood movies tend to depict New York as having, and comics as well, as having all these alleyways. And they were saying, no, if you actually live in New York, the buildings are right next to each other. There's very few alleyways. It's not as common as our media would let us believe. So I think this is just, this is a perfectly normal feature of a modern New York style city, which is the very close walls of two neighboring buildings, because every inch of land has to be occupied. It all has to be used.
It's like Tokyo too.
Well, there you go. Now Melbourne has laneways. So many laneways.
Right. Low population, lots of space. A lot of it's desert, but
not Melbourne.
So he says that he somehow senses that this thing is the source of his torment, because it's, he's feeling that ray kind of again, although he's not acting crazy like before. And he actually goes over and picks up the thing, and this other guy is approaching him and is going to bash him on the head with a hammer. But just before he can do that, Cap breaks the Madbomb with his shield, and he and the hammer guy both pass out. And when he wakes up, just everything is a mess. People are now, they're all, since the Madbomb is smashed, they're all kind of snapped out of it, lying on the street or kind of holding their heads and walking away, and stuff is on fire. It's a whole page panel showing the devastation.
Yeah, this is where he makes the direct allusion to World War II.
Right. Haven't seen anything like this since World War II. The city is in a complete shambles.
So this is presumably a city that had been maybe from air bombardment. Was racked by bombs and machine gun fire and so forth, or maybe like besieged. So that's the direct comparison he's making there. And we know that the Madbomb is in effect, but we will find out later that this is going to be spun a certain way, and I find that quite chilling too. The idea that how the story gets manipulated in terms of what happened, and he's bringing to the fore a couple of really emotionally charged facts here. World War II, obviously, but also the role of rioting in America, and how riot is almost a word which stops you thinking about what happened. And I think that it's interesting because we've had a couple of depictions of the assault and massacre, the Black Wall Street event, the turn of the last century, and I think that's fascinating because it tends to just get dismissed using sort of passive language, but what you're talking about is an organized attack on American citizens. That was devastating. There was a loss of life. There was a targeted attack on people because of their race. And if we talk about something as a riot, it's almost, what can you do? It just happened. You know? as opposed to no, it was a coordinated attack. So yeah, I think he's doing some really interesting stuff here. This storyline and this particular page, it's just really, really powerful page.
Falcon swoops in and saves a woman who's about to have some wreckage fall on her. And then Cap and Falcon are approached by a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who's really playing the part. He's got sunglasses and a fedora and a trench coat.
Which is apparently very deliberate. Can I just ask you about something? The panel where Falcon saves that woman, and it's a white woman, and he's tending to her. And in the panel where he's rescued her and he's tending to her, making sure she's okay, she's looking away from him. She's got a certain expression on her face. And then in the next panel, she's covering her face. I was wondering, was something else originally happening here? Was there going to be a sort of bitter moment here where, like, Falcon, who's a black man, rescues a white woman, and then she's not under the effects of the Madbomb anymore, but she's maybe still a racist or something?
Well, yeah, it is kind of odd.
Yeah. She's not looking at him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would think if she's saying, her word balloon says, "Thank you, young man, thank you." Mm-hmm. So it would seem likely she'd be looking at him.
Maybe I'm looking too much into this, but I kind of feel like there's a lot of rot being exhumed in this storyline in terms of America and its relationship with race and relationship with class and power. And I feel like this is the kind of sharp edge Kirby would throw in there, and maybe somebody interceded and said, no, that's not going in there. That's not happening.
So from the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Cap and Falcon hear the term Madbomb for the first time as he identifies the thing that Cap smashed. He says that they need their help. Your country needs you. It's urgent. So they are flown out to the desert somewhere as the agent explains some of what they know about it. The government knows that there are these mad bombs, not sure who is making them. And there's some sort of conspiracy going on. And Cap comment, I assume it's Cap, conspiracy in this year of the bicentennial. What an ironic twist of fate.
Message.
So they arrive at this military base, and all the soldiers on duty seem really tense. And they're really not ready to take any humor at all. Just move on. Spare the humor, one guy says when Falcon tries to make a joke. Pass on, he says.
This is really interesting because from the jump, Falcon knows something's up. Like immediately, he knows there's a problem, and it's because there's a bunch of white dudes with loaded weapons pointed at him. He's like, no,
right.
He's immediately like, nope, bad. This is all bad. And Cap's too trusting. Cap's like going, oh, I'm sure it's fine. Let's just do what they tell us to do. And as we progress, like Falcon just keeps saying, this is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem.
Right, because the agent tells them to go in this door, and they're walking through this tunnel. Yeah, and Cap says, "Let's go, Falcon. No need to drag your feet." And Falcon says, "I can't explain it, but I'm getting bad vibes in here." Mm-hmm. And he's kind of sensitive to everything. Like the door was 4 feet thick. Maybe they don't want us to get out. And Cap says, "That's sheer nonsense. You're beginning to dramatize the security routing." "Oh yeah, you smell anything?" That Cap looks really surprised. Gas!
Oh, dear.
So they face gas. They face these small missiles aimed at them. They face, two walls approaching, pushing towards each other, trying to crush them until Cap finds a tiny button on the floor that he steps on, and then they fall through to a lower floor, come out a door, and who's there? You recognize this guy, right?
I recognize him. I absolutely recognize him. Tell me, are you familiar with a particular meme format, Tim? It's the Spectre of Death, and he's in front of one of those arcade machines where you use the claw to pick up your favorite toy. And it's like, it's always somebody adapts this meme format every time a celebrity dies, and the caption always reads, "Is Kissinger even in this thing?"
Right. Well, he's still alive today, but yes, it's Henry Kissinger. Not identified by name, but a worker calls him Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, and he says, "You can call me Henny," in a couple of pages' time. Yeah, I gasped out loud. It upset me greatly when I saw this. I'm sure Stanley had a lot of time for Kissinger because he was trying to get involved in that whole sort of circle. But I think when I saw him here, it was just like, good God, where is this going to go? Because I have faith because Kirby is I think he sees what needs to be seen. And you were saying before that the Englehart stuff precedes this.
Right, that's earlier in the 70s, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where you had, Nixon is actually a supervillain that is controlling this secret government and everything. And then they changed it to say, no, we can't have Nixon be the actual villain. So it's like, other guy. But it was clearly Nixon. It was clearly going to be Nixon the entire time. Building up to it. But here we have Kissinger. So I was wondering, where are we going with this? And the fact that there's this massive conspiracy and he seems to have inside information on it, I'm curious to see where this goes. I wonder if the Madbomb is something that he was involved in or proposed and it's gotten out of control and gotten away from.
Well, yeah, in real life, maybe so. But in this story, the whole point of this has been to make sure that this is really Cap and Falcon.
Yeah.
All these were tests. And then there's another test in this room when they have to fight these guys, or Cap does, and he's just throwing them around like dolls. And so that's kind of the final test. Like, yep, that's Captain America, all right.
Did you notice that his accent becomes more pronounced later? Like the famous...
yeah, some W's
Kissinger
changed
accent.
to V's. Like, while becomes a vile.
I do wonder if again we're getting some rewriting here. I'm not sure what's happened, or maybe it just made a choice that when he's maybe more conversational, he slips back into his famous mode of speaking. For the sake of those listening, at the time of recording, Henry Kissinger is still alive. At the time of recording.
Yeah, what is he getting close to 100? I think.
Yes.
So he fills them in some more about what they know, that there were these smaller mad bombs and they've gradually been getting bigger and bigger, and they've sent SHIELD agents to look into this and they've all vanished. But before one of the agents vanished, he was able to send them a photo of a really large mad bomb. And these mad bombs all have names. The first one is Peanut, then Dumpling, and I don't know if the one that they faced had a name, but then the big one is called Big Daddy.
Oh, Big Daddy. The preceding page, there's a goof there. So it's clearly the Kissinger dialogue. The man died before he could tell us anything, but he did have this. But the speech balloon's pointing to Cap. Falcon then speaks, and then Kissinger speaks. But I feel as if the leftmost balloon and the rightmost balloon belong to Kissinger, because he's describing the set of circumstances. So only he would have that information. Cap wouldn't have that information. So either that's just a mistake, or again, something's being rewritten here. That's my
it looks like Cap and Kissinger have swapped dialogue here. Because it makes more sense for Cap to say, if this is the picture of a piano-sized mad bomb, we face a formidable task, because Kissinger already knows what's in the picture.
He knows exactly what it looks like, yeah. Yeah.
So it's strange for him to say if. Yeah, it's probably just a goof, but who knows?
I wish that there were a book that detailed all of this as well as the Fourth World stuff. Because we have to get after tomorrow's.
Tim, maybe you will write that book. Sorry, I interrupted your flow. You had just identified Big Daddy. Let's discuss Big Daddy. What is Big Daddy?
Yeah, it's like towering over the people in the picture, like much taller than them. And it looks like it has like a brain inside of it.
It does, yes. It does look like it has a brain. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, this is an idea that shifts a little bit here, because in the last page, Cap says, and my guess is that he's timed to go off at the start of the bicentennial year. But it seems like in the next issue, now they're saying it's going to be on the bicentennial day, on July 4th, not on January 1st. So, yeah, that kind of shifts as we go through the story. But anyway, somehow related to the bicentennial, it's set to go off. And I guess, drive the whole U.S. crazy. And probably part of Canada and Mexico, too.
Yeah. Yes, your northern and southern neighbors who you love so dearly. I think it's interesting as a concept as well, because it's the bicentennial. It's that idea of confronting America with its own violence. And it's like, on this day that you're celebrating all the best that your country has to offer and all you've achieved as a nation, it's just going to be torn down and destroyed. And revel in the violence that has also always been there, which is quite interesting. This is a less upsetting, less graphic, less disturbing, less disgusting version of Crossed. Again, Tim, I strongly recommend you never read Crossed, but one of Garth Ennis's main concepts in that book is the idea of this is the violence and depravity and sickness that's always there, but just given full expression. So I feel like Kirby sort of, that's what Kirby's doing here too.
Coming up, we move on to issue 194. But first, a reminder to join us for 20th Century TV and Music Trivia Quiz videos and more on our Patreon page. Patrons donating $4 a month or more get access to hours of additional podcasts. Get all the info at patreon.com/deconcomics.
Are you addicted to classic TV shows? Did you spend the 80s sitting in front of the boob tube? Then join us for TV Tangents, where we examine television of the 20th century with barely any contemporary context. Visit Shout Engine, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, and look for TV Tangents.
All right, so issue 194. Did you notice the typo on the cover? Mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling.
Usually it's boggling, B-O-G-G-L-E-I-N-G, but it's B-O-G-E-L-I-N-G here.
Nicely caught.
Cataclysmic Kirby action in the mind-boggling Marvel manner.
Really? That's how you spell
boggling?
Okay.
Yeah, B-O-G-G-L-E, boggle.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
But yeah, I've never seen boggling before.
I'll defer to the editor.
So on this cover,
the Falcon's
Captain
back.
Falcon, Falcon's there, and they're fighting like this large kind of Hulk-like figure, and there's some kind of soldiers coming over the hill. Definitely not American military. They're wearing kind of like Marvel's wizard character helmets, that shape, kind of almost like cone heads.
Yes, they look like cone heads. Yes.
Before Saturday Night Live, Kirby predicted Saturday Night Live. Well, no, actually in 75, 76, I guess it was on the air already. I think maybe 75 was when it came on, or 74.
Were cone heads there from the jump? Because I know it was Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd, and Dan Aykroyd
I don't know
when
when Coneheads debuted.
We will look that up later for the notes.
The Coneheads debuted on Saturday Night Live on January 15, 1977, more than a year after this issue came out. So, yup, Kirby inspired the Coneheads. Maybe.
This story is called The Trojan Horde. Now, on page 1, there's, I guess you could call it like an origin explanation box at the top that like all the Marvel comics had in those days. But I thought it was kind of interesting because it says that Cap woke up from suspended animation in the mid-1960s. And, you know, with Marvel time, as they call it, you know, his thawing out has become much later than that now. But I thought it was interesting here, like 10 years after Cap returned to Marvel Comics, there's at least Kirby, or whoever wrote this box, is still talking about it in real time rather than Marvel time, where it probably just happened a few weeks ago in Marvel time at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. We mentioned Steve Englehart before, but I remember when I read his, well, obviously his Captain America run, because he's talking about contemporary figures, but also his Avengers run. He gives specific dates. He will say 1974. You know, and I even remember reading his stuff as a teenager going, oh no, man, don't do that. It's like somebody's trying to figure out The Simpsons as well. It's like, do The Simpsons have smartphones now? They used to have smartphones. Maggie's still a baby, right?
Well, that's like, Foxtrot. The comic strip, Foxtrot. Are you familiar with it?
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with Foxtrot, though.
Okay. So, you know, it's about a family, and it started in the 90s. And these days, only the Sunday edition is new, and the weekday ones are reruns. So it's interesting to see Sunday strips where, you know, they have smartphones and everything's current, and then you read the weekday strips, and they're talking about AOL floppy disks. And IMAX and stuff. Like, what? And the characters are all the same age.
But you can't rerun that content because there are people who have no idea what any of those words you just said mean. They are alive and they have jobs and they can vote and they don't know what a floppy disk is.
Yeah, quite possibly. Getting more and more true every day. So at the start of this issue, Cap and Falcon have this apparatus on their heads, and they're, well, as we see in a few pages, they're going to be sort of immunized to the Madbomb. Now, Kirby carries over from his DC work where pages 2 and 3 are one big splash. Although this one has some exposition in it, and you know the pictures of the different versions of the Madbomb and the Peanut and Dumpling, and you know we see the mob again, so it's explaining what happened last issue basically.
It's a very nice device as well. It's such an impactful image, and then just here's your exposition dump. But I don't mind it at all. It's a beautiful splash page.
Yeah, it is.
Even though it's exposition filled, lots of text on the page.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's nicely laid out. So then we see Cap and Falcon being zapped with this thing, which together with the apparatus is supposed to immunize them, and it knocks them out. But
did you appreciate that it's literal Kirby crackle? Like it actually says crackle.
Right, and yeah, that's definitely Kirby crackle with the dots.
Yeah.
But yeah, the actual sound effect. Yeah, Patrick would love that. And there now, just like in the previous issue, I mean, the Shield keeps putting their lives in danger. And here they're like, after it's too late, they're like, well, do you think they're alive? I don't know.
They've done this like 5 times already. This is what happened to D-Man. This is how D-Man ended up with his mental issues. He was desperate for this stuff. Do you know who D-Man is?
Yeah, I remember seeing him quite a few years. He was like a homeless guy, wasn't he?
Yes. He looks like a combination of Captain America and Wolverine, and he lives on the streets. He's unhoused, and I think a lot of people play him for laughs, but some creative teams have gotten a lot of pathos out of him. But yeah, that's the joke, that he believes he's a superhero and he doesn't have a home. Ha He looks like Wolverine.
I don't know that he's popped up recently, but I think that might have been in the 90s mainly. But anyway, they are alive. They're still unconscious as we change scenes to an exclusive suburb somewhere in the heart of the land.
When we say the heart of the land, do we mean like the center, or do we mean New England? Because, from a bicentennial perspective, maybe that's what they're referring to.
I don't know. It's really vague.
Because the mode of dress and the way that these characters are introduced, and this aristocratic theme that we see being out here.
I don't know why they'd be hanging out in Iowa.
Exactly.
But yeah, General Heshing, and we see him first. He's got a monocle, and he's kind of tough looking, but older. And then he's talking to a guy dressed like an 18th century aristocrat, which he kind of is, even though it's the 20th century. His last name is Tari. He's talking about his ancestor, Sir William Tari. He's got a portrait of the guy.
So you say Tari. I heard it as Tory, as in the British Tory party.
You could read it that way. Taurey.
I mean, we know Kirby has this interesting pronunciation spelling. What with dark side?
Right. Yeah, he did that a lot in the Fourth World. So
I don't know. Just putting it out there.
But yeah, this Tari, he's got it in for America because and the Declaration of Independence, because it's allegedly, I don't think this is true, but it did away with the elite. I don't know. If that's the case, maybe we need another one. But
I never stopped being fascinated by this American idea that you guys don't have an aristocracy.
It might have been that thought might have been stronger in the 70s than now. I don't know that many people believe it now, but certainly not liberals. But in the 70s, maybe there was more general belief in that idea.
Can I read you something?
Okay.
It's from a recently produced book. Okay, this is a adventure book. A
comic or prose?
It's a tabletop RPG adventure book.
Okay.
As you may know, I've recently discovered this whole new genre for me. But this is from the introduction to this book. The book is called The Courts of the Shadow Fae. It's an adventure I'm running with a party at the moment. This is from the introduction. Header: Elitism as villainy. Text: In American life, elitism is a crime, but in feudal times it was just the natural order of things. Nobles ruled, bishops decreed excommunications and forgiveness, and peasants and merchants sucked it up. Yet nowhere in most fantasy role-playing games does class and status show up. I decided that Courts of the Shadow Fae was going to do something with this theme in addition to the more obvious themes of demons and blah, 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 blah. The design point I chose was to give class and status a metric you can... And he goes on like this. But that first sentence, in American life, elitism is a crime.
Huh.
That blows my mind. Recently written, Tim. Recently.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess some people still adhere to that, but
But I see, and I don't see the rougher neighborhoods of social media, but I still do see people complaining about billionaires and stuff. So I think a lot of people don't believe that nowadays. But it turns out that Tari's ancestor was killed in a duel with Steve Rogers' ancestor, who was also called Captain Steve Rogers of the Continental Army.
I hate this so much.
And looks exactly like modern Steve Rogers, like he's a time traveler.
Well, Tim, hopefully he is.
Well, that might turn out to be the case. We'll have to see.
Hopefully they actually send him back in time and he becomes his own ancestor. Like, that would be amazing. But I have this horrible feeling it's this sort of racial inheritance idea. We recently saw it in the latest Star Wars movie. There's this idea of, oh no, all the characters happen to be related to previous characters we've already met, and it's their family bloodlines that make them special. That seems to be what's happening here. And what maybe saves this for me is the fact that Steve, we later see, is musing on this, and then Falcon just calls him on it, like, yeah, but he owns slaves.
Well, yeah, so Steve said that he had a dream about his ancestor Stephen Rogers, who fought in the Revolution, and Falcon says, hooray for him. Chances are that he owned a farm with a lot of singing black slaves.
Truth. Testify. Sam is just like laying it down. I mean, a lot of comic book commentary, particularly for a certain kind of fan, likes to call out depictions of the angry black man as being cringy and overdone, and certainly there are examples of it being I think borderline offensive, but I really like characters like Sam, where they actually are calling the white characters to account and going, no, but seriously, you haven't even thought about this. You're just fixating this idea of your ancestral heroism. And is this something that other writers have upheld as well, that Steve's got this inheritance? Because my memory was that Steve's background, Steve Rogers, we know, his immediate background was that he was grew up impoverished. I want to say he grew up in Boston. Yes, is it Boston?
New York, I think. Well, I mean, although the MCU has sort of changed it, I guess, because they've put him in a different part of New York. I think, in the 40s, they said that he was from Manhattan, which sounds weird nowadays. So I think the movies moved him to Brooklyn or Queens or something. I don't really
so yeah, you're right. I think he's Brooklyn and Spider-Man's from Queens.
Yeah, that's right.
But I thought some writer had pitched the idea that he had Irish heritage, which, again, I would have thought Rogers would be of English descent. But yeah, but I would have picked him as being somebody whose family maybe got to America in the 19th century, whereas here we have him as being, no, he's been here since the start, There was always a Rogers. And Rogers arrived in the Mayflower.
Yeah, so this is the conversation that we talked about a little bit before. I'm just going to read these two panels. Steve says, I can't really say, friend, about his ancestor. He left a diary when he died. It remained in the family for generations, but I don't recall reading anything in it about slaves. And Falcon says, don't go on with that hero jive. Your boy had a stake in that revolution. My family still worked that farm. Steve says, probably true, yet that was a time when men began to turn away from injustice. It took 200 years, Falcon, but this country's grown up. Falcon says, Jive, it's still trying, friend. I'll stake my life on that. And yeah, I think Kirby has a good feeling here for the different points of view.
Yeah. Injustice. I don't want to pay these taxes. A revolution.
Yeah. By the way, jumping back a page, I thought it was sort of weird that Tari has a really his information about modern Steve Rogers is really selective. That he knows that this Steve Rogers as like a weakling. What does he call him? A despicable weakling who was rejected by the army in World War II. So he knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that Steve Rogers is still around now. Doesn't know how he could still be alive and still young at this point because of the suspended animation. Doesn't know about that. Doesn't know that he's Captain America.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's odd that all that he knows about him is that he was a weakling who was rejected by the army in the 40s.
He reckons he's just going to roll up in some old man and in his Zimmer frame and beat the crap out of him.
I guess.
That's what he thinks is going to happen. Again, and at the bottom of the page, you've got the two lads recovering. They're in two separate beds, but just put
they're
that out
both
there,
shirtless. They're kind of like,
Yeah, working out some stress.
And so they're talking with some like really central casting doctor with glasses that kind of reflect the light. You can't see his eyes in a lot of panels. Yeah, and he's saying, you survived the test. Now you got to survive the enemy. And we think that we kind of think you're probably okay. And then when Falcon and Steve say, yeah, we promise you we're fine, then he's like, okay, well, go ahead on your mission then. Take your word for it.
I'm telling you, they've killed so many men. They've killed so many people with this treatment.
So,
yeah, sure. Go on out there. See what happens.
So the next panel, they're out in the desert somewhere flying this, what they call a skimmer, which is this weirdly shaped airplane. And they're trying to figure out, so a SEALed agent sent an SOS signal from that wilderness before he vanished. And so they're kind of looking around for a needle in a haystack here, trying to figure out where that SOS came from. And then they see a giant man ready to throw a boulder at them. And they run into the giant and they crash into some rocks, and the rocks turn out to be made of foam rubber. And they just kind of bounce off of their plane.
It's fascinating. It's kind of going back to some of the New God stuff where you had the sense of a lot of apocalypse missions on Earth being like evil movie sets. Like there's always the idea of actually, none of this is real. It's all fake. You're in a hole of mirrors, I do like this idea of like all these secret staging grounds for different evil plots around America, and you've got styrofoam boulders, fake townships, things like that.
So yeah, the giant seems to be actually rather docile, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And then one of the Conehead guys shows up that we saw on the cover and holds them at gunpoint. Realizes that they are SHIELD agents. Of course, they're not in costume here. They're just dressed as SHIELD agents, basically.
But it's a decent deductive leap. I mean, they've happened upon this secret installation in the middle of the desert, and he recognizes well that they're not from the labor camps or labor pens. Sorry, this is what he says, because they've not been mutated in some way. That seems to be what's happening here. We'll meet the characters later, but they seem to have actually been subject to a treatment themselves and become distorted in some way. Experimented upon.
And the guy says that this is the headquarters of the Royalist Forces of America. And a bunch of other Coneheads show up, and they're shooting at I guess it's the same giant that we saw before. Steve and Cap figure out that this is not good stuff going on here.
and they get into a fight with the Coneheads for a couple pages. And then finally they are zapped with mind waves. And it seems that they were affected by them. They're screaming and they're then seem to be knocked out. And they're carried into the headquarters. But then when they're alone, it turns out that, no, they're fine. The treatment worked, and the ray didn't affect them at all.
Now, at times this felt like a Commandy, a discarded Commandy plot. And I got to this page and I was like, oh, no, I'm not bringing back the bit. I'm not doing the bit. I'm not going to do the bit anymore. I'm not going to have not doing it.
Cap is knocked out.
They're drink, so I don't have the drink.
But yeah, I can see too. Instead of being surrounded by a bunch of much less intelligent humans, they're surrounded by these mutated people in the labor pens who are also less intelligent than they are considerably. And late in the story, like on a couple pages late, we just got a couple pages left. The last page, they're figuring out that these are probably the SHIELD agents who have been mutated in this installation. And they talk to one of the Coneheads out there about what's going on. And he's saying, that Cap and Falcon are supposed to be, I should say Sam and Steve are supposed to also be mutated. They see somebody getting wheeled into surgery, and the guy says there's no telling what a man will look like when they're finished with him. So I guess this is some kind of human experimentation going on. So Sam and Steve lose themselves in the crowd of mutated people and change it to costume. And that sets up the next issue, which is titled The World of 1984. And since 1984 has passed, I'm thinking, okay, so Reagan and Mondale and the Wendy's Where's the Beef ad and Michael Jackson Thriller, and but obviously you didn't have any of those things in mind.
No. It's pure George Orwell.
Right.
Yeah, but that is funny that like that was a sort of looming date, and then I think again, like with some of the other things, there was this sense of it's fine. We didn't go that bad. No, we went worse. We've always been at war with Eurasia. Yeah.
Okay.
No, this was spectacular. I really enjoy these. It's juicy stuff.
Yeah, and if you look at them closely, there's some deeper meaning in there too. Which seems to be typical of the Kirby written stuff.
Yeah, he's trying for it. He's going for it. Yeah.
All right, so we'll come back to this periodically and work through his Cap run from the 70s.
Awesome stuff.
Captain America and the Falcon, Madbomb, is published by Marvel. Emmet has recently had an essay included in the book Waxing and Waning, Essays on Moon Knight, published by Sequart. Check out the link in the show notes. If you're enjoying our comics discussion every week, consider supporting this podcast by joining us at patreon.com/deconcomics, and go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on what used to be Twitter, on Facebook, where we have both a page and a group, or on YouTube. Via our site, you can also shop on Amazon to support the show and find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode there or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. That's also the address for submitting your own comics work for possible inclusion on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. Next week, Kumar and Emmet discuss Chantal Montier's Social Fiction, a collection of comics fueled by political anger, hauntingly far-sighted satire, and attacks on consumer culture. Montier's work collected here uses science fiction to discuss white supremacy, body autonomy, and talking cats. That's next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.